let's look at some of the tools that we might use in a sort of day-to-day workday, just to handle some of the routine tasks that you have to do from every day, but they're not exciting. They're not things that you get any joy out of doing. And so one of those things is actually screening people for suitability. So whether that's triage or whether that's actually just validating whether they're remotely what they want is actually what you provide, whether that matches up. So what we do as part of the online booking, we actually have a pop-up form that asks a few questions just to validate that person, so that when you have that booking come through, gets into your schedule, and you can see straight away whether that's an appropriate person or not. And if not, you can always refer them on to one of your colleagues, or you can refer them to another clinic if you've got a referral network going. And of course, if they are suitable, you at least have a bit more information than you might otherwise have straight at hand, recorded in the EHR directly, so that you can crack on straight from there. Bridget asks that there are too many priority matters and too little time. How to lessen the stress of this? Now, what I would say is, of course, arranging priorities and deciding what's more important, relatively speaking, than something else is, it's not something you can necessarily use a tool for as such. But what you can do is automate and digitize a lot of those things that are important, but they take up too much of your mental energy. So things like preparing letters and preparing prescriptions, sending out invoices, as Gina said, these kinds of things, they're very energy intensive, not one by one, but it's sort of, as you're doing these things, hundreds and hundreds of things a day, that does sap your energy. And I would say it's about getting those things to a state where you can pretty much click a button and be confident that what you want to happen is going to happen. So that you can actually focus on the activities that do involve a bit more thought. So things like your analytics and, understanding, what's actually going on in the clinic, whether you're meeting all the targets you've set for yourself, that kind of thing, and you're tackling issues like that. So yeah, I would say that's probably one of the first steps I would take. Then of course it's of course all about Outlook and all sorts of other things like that. Not beyond the scope of this sort of chat really. And of course, as part of the screening process nowadays, you're going to want to do a COVID screening test if you can. Obviously, in a lot of cases now, hopefully, people will have had some degree of testing, or they can order a test through the NHS. Done so myself; it's quite quick actually. But in general, what you want to do as soon as you can before the appointment is actually have them answer a few questions. Try to be confident that they're not actually, coronavirus positive or got any symptoms that might suggest that, and then, keep things safe. So that's one thing you can easily do as part of the booking process. Just pops up, they answer the questions, and then obviously if they answer the questions in a way that, you think they better stay at home, or maybe you want to ask them to visit their own GP or whatever they might need to do, you can obviously act accordingly. And it just stops you having that issue where, firstly, you get people who shouldn't really be in the clinic turning up, but secondly, you actually, by doing that, you're risking yourself, you're risking other patients and whoever the person might have met on the way traveling, but also you won't be able to carry out that consultation necessarily, and you're going to lose out in that regard as well. So it causes a huge amount of hassle if that happens. And what I would say is, I find a lot of what the admin team, reception teams and so on tend to be doing is actually double checking things with patients and making sure that the person's aware of certain things and making sure that they're going to turn up and all the rest of it. So what I want to know before I talk about this a little bit is how many of you so far are using anything like automated reminders, so emails that go out at a certain time before the appointment, or text messages, for example, just to try and get patients to make sure they turn up. Who's using that as a tactic already to cut down on cancellations and no-shows? Okay, Gina is straight off the bat again saying not yet. And Gina, I presume that means you plan to, or certainly would like to look into it. Which is probably a good thing. I mean, even if you're not struggling with cancellations and no-shows, I find that these kinds of messages to patients actually sort of keep them in the loop, and you can use them as means to distribute information as well, actually. So they do cover sort of multiple aspects of patient communication. It's not just about getting them in through the door. It's about actually making sure they're ready for the appointment, they've done any preparation they need to do, and so on. So, for example, you could, include if they're coming in for a blood glucose test or something, or glucose tolerance test. You can make sure that they're fasting or whatever else they might need to do. So lots of different things you can do there. And I will talk about how you can customize these things, despite the fact they're automated a bit later. Yes, Gina, especially during Christmas. Yeah, I mean, we don't know really what's going to happen with the whole, England being locked down and, things changing, and, things are up in the air a little bit, aren't they? But I think that, I mean, given that alone, even if we do sort of, even if the lockdown restrictions are eased and so on, we're still going to have various restrictions in place, and it's going to cause a bit of chaos. That's clear. And people are going to prioritize seeing their family on a day that they all can do it, rather than going to the clinic. Maybe they might reschedule quickly. They might, all sorts of things might happen. So it does make a lot of sense to actually, to actually keep people in the loop, make sure that it's on the, at the front of their mind. It does make sense, yes. And one thing I would say as well is that what I would suspect might happen, or might be worth thinking about it happening, and it did in May with quite a few of the clients I've got. We did end up doing what I'm about to describe, and it worked well. So what happened was that in May, one of my clients had a full month of appointments, sort of physical, in-person visits, and of course the clinic wasn't able to stay open. They didn't have enough. They couldn't keep enough staff on that they could actually physically stay open. So what we did was we actually built a tool that would allow them, straight from their schedule inside Medesk, they can actually just click a button and it switches the consultation to an online version. So you get a virtual consultation instead of a physical one, and a confirmation of that goes out to the patient automatically with all the links they need, all the information they need to download the telemedicine app that we've got. And so it meant that you can actually salvage appointments even sort of minutes before, really. You could ring up the patient if they hadn't turned up. They'd say, oh no, I'm busy, I can't make it. You can say, well, how about jumping on a video call then? I'm happy to see you. You switch that, sends out an email to them automatically, or a text message with the link straight there and then. And you've got the patient on the other side. And we found we saved a whole month worth of appointments that way. It wasn't 100% successful, of course. It was around about 80% successful, as I remember. But that's certainly better than zero. I think you'd agree. So what we tend to do is we tend to use these reminders. They go out automatically, of course, but you schedule them in advance. So depending on whether they're a physical visit or whether they're a telemedical consultation, so over the video, we actually change the timing, the scheduling, depending on that. So, for example, with a physical appointment, it makes no sense to tell the person an hour before, unless you live in a little town and it's walking distance or something. But typically, it's not going to work. Whereas in the case of telemedicine, if a person's at home, or at least somewhere quiet, maybe in a park or whatever it might be, they might at least be able to have a phone conversation with you, if not a full-on video consultation. And that hourly reminder would actually say an hour before, don't forget this, and they'd be able to actually engage. So it salvages the situation no matter what might happen, really. And what we do is not just about automating things, because of course automating things is great. It's all about timing and everything. But what you want to do is actually give the person something interesting to actually understand. So it might be that you need to tell them something specific based on the kind of patient they are. So if they're diabetic, for example, you might need them to bring along some of their blood glucose readings, if they've been doing pinpricks and so on, and recording them. If they haven't, got something online that they're doing with you to record that, they might have a sheet, for example, if they're older. To remind them to bring things like that. Could be that if they're disabled and they need disabled access, so if they're physically going to attend, then you're reminding them how to avail themselves of the ramp, or maybe there's another entrance around the corner, all those sorts of things. And they would only appear for those kinds of people. So you'd sort of tag the patient record accordingly, And then what happens is that automatic email would go out without you doing anything to it, but it would only display the information that's completely relevant to that patient. So what you can do basically is combine the best of two worlds. So you've got all the automation going on, you don't even need to touch it, but you've got, at the same time, you've got all that customization and all that personalized approach at the same time as well. And the golden standard that we try to adhere to as much as we can, and we try to help our clinics do that, is to make it so that everything's automated, but the patient thinks it's completely bespoke for them. I mean, ultimately it is. It's just that you've prepared in advance. So that's really the benchmark for me. Same applies, of course, to appointment types. So, as I said earlier, if it's a blood glucose test or something like that, or glucose tolerance test, you might want to warn people about what to do in advance, if anything. Same with different services and products. If they're having a blood test and they need to be fasting for it, you can let them know to miss breakfast and so on. So there's lots you can do to salvage things, because the last thing you want to do is have the patient come in and they're completely unprepared and physically unsuitable for whatever it is you want to do with them. So it really does save a lot of time and a lot of hassle and a lot of problems. I find, for example, if a person's turned up at an appointment, they're not suitable for what they're supposed to be having done, and you send them away but still want them to pay for what they're supposed to have done, they're obviously going to contest that. They're going to think, well, actually, I didn't know about this, why should I pay, etc. But of course, you do still have to cover your overheads. So you're within your rights to charge them at least now or later, or at least some sort of fee. And if you've said that in your automated emailing based on the service or whatever, they will be well aware of what to do, and you'll avoid all these sort of things down the line.